What happens when a father goes on the run with his not-so-ordinary son? And the closer they get to safety, the more the whole world starts paying attention. Let's find out. Lucas and Roy are staying in a hotel room watching a TV news report about themselves. On TV, reporters are saying that Lucas and Roy have kidnapped a young boy and are now on the run. After watching for a bit, Roy decides they shouldn't stay any longer and tells Lucas it's time to leave. Roy goes into the bedroom where Alton is sitting on the bed. Alton has a sheet over his head, goggles on his eyes, and a flashlight that he's using to read a comic book. Lucas grabs their bags, and Roy picks Alton up and carries him to the car. As they drive out of the hotel parking lot, the receptionist notices them and decides to report their car to the police. Elsewhere, 3 men are also watching the TV report about Roy Tomlin. The leader of the group tells the others that they have 4 days to find Alton and bring him back. He then leaves the room and walks into another area where he steps up to a podium in front of around 200 people sitting in church pews. Outside the church, FBI agents arrive in force. Many of them are armed, and several buses are parked nearby. They surround the building and then enter the church, interrupting the service. The agents speak briefly with the man leading the sermon, and he tells his followers to listen to what the agents have to say. The agents explain that they have a warrant to search the entire ranch and that everyone living there will be escorted off the property and taken to an old school for questioning. On the road, Lucas swerves to avoid hitting another car. A second car crashes into them instead. Lucas pulls over and goes to check on the woman driving the other vehicle, but she's unconscious. A police officer arrives at the scene and Lucas tells him to call for an ambulance. The officer recognizes Lucas and Roy from the news, and things escalate quickly. Guns are drawn, and Lucas ends up shooting the officer so they can escape without causing a bigger scene. At the ranch, the people who were taken from the church are unloaded from the buses and brought into the school building. They are separated by age and gender and given a lot of paperwork to fill out. The pastor is taken into a separate room where he is interviewed by an FBI agent and Paul Sevier, who works for the NSA. They ask him about the scriptures he uses and where the information comes from. The pastor says he wrote the scriptures himself, but explains that all the information came from Alton. He also reveals that Roy is Alton's father. Roy and Lucas arrive at the garage of a man named Eldon. Eldon used to live on the ranch, knows Roy and Alton, and wants to help them. He has prepared a room for Alton, and Alton goes to sleep. He takes off his goggles, and Roy puts noise-canceling headphones on him so he can rest. The next morning, Roy wakes up to the house shaking. He and Lucas rush to Alton's room and find Eldon staring into Alton's eyes. A beam of light is connecting them, and the room starts to fall apart. Roy hits Eldon over the head with a lamp to break the connection. When sunlight hits Alton, his eyes begin flashing uncontrollably, so Roy quickly pulls him into the shadows and calms him down. Meanwhile, Paul continues interviewing members of the ranch to understand their relationship with Alton. He learns that Alton can show people visions and make them feel calm by sending beams of light from his eyes. When Alton was younger, his abilities caused objects to break, and the effects got stronger as he grew older. To manage this, the ranch members let Alton sleep during the day and stay awake at night, which seemed to reduce the damage. The people Paul interviews believe that Friday, March 6th is their judgment day. They say that everything will be fine as long as Alton is brought back before that date. After hearing this, the agents decide to end the interviews early. Everyone is put back on the buses and taken back to the ranch. 2 men from the group, Doak and Levi, immediately run to one of the buildings and pull a duffel bag out of a hidden compartment. They load it into a pickup truck and drive away. Roy and Lucas prepare to leave Eldon's house. Roy briefly considers killing Eldon before taking his van, but ultimately decides against it. As they drive, Lucas notices that Alton looks weaker than before. Roy brushes it off and says, "Alton is fine." They stop at a gas station to pick up supplies, and so Roy can use a payphone. They leave Alton in the car, but he senses something strange and gets out, walking into the middle of the parking lot. Roy sees this and notices a woman approaching Alton. He hangs up the phone and runs over, telling the woman to leave. Roy scolds Alton for getting out of the car, but then apologizes. Moments later, flaming debris starts falling from above and crashes into the gas station parking lot. Roy grabs Alton and rushes back to the car, where Lucas is waiting. They drive away as quickly as possible. While on the road, Alton's nose starts bleeding. Roy comforts him, holding him close as they continue driving. They arrive at Sarah's house, Alton's mother, and she welcomes them warmly. She's clearly happy to see Alton and treats him like a regular kid, showing him new toys she bought for him. That night, Sarah tucks Alton into bed. When she steps out of his room, she finds Lucas and Roy waiting to talk. They discuss how Alton has been getting weaker. Lucas thinks they should take him to a hospital, but Roy insists they can't risk it and says they need to reach their destination within 3 days. Sarah sides with Roy, even though she's clearly worried. At the same time, FBI agents gather at the gas station parking lot to inspect the damage from earlier. Paul is informed that a military satellite designed to detect nuclear activity was pulled out of orbit, and the debris that fell at the gas station came from it. Lucas pulls the van they took from Eldon's house around to the back of Sarah's place. While they talk, Sarah asks Lucas about his past. He explains that he wasn't part of the ranch originally. He grew up as Roy's childhood friend, but his parents later moved him to the ranch. He hadn't heard from Roy in years until Roy suddenly showed up with Alton and asked for help. Soon after, everyone piles into Sarah's car and leaves the house. While driving, Sarah asks Alton about what happened at the gas station. Alton calmly explains that he pulled the satellite out of orbit on purpose because he could tell it was being used to track him. Back at Sarah's house, Doak and Levi search through the place and find her car registration. When they realize the car is gone and see the van instead, they search it to see if the registration paperwork is still inside. While on the road, Alton suddenly starts coughing and choking, and light begins to shine from his eyes. The glow is so bright that it sets off the car alarm, forcing them to pull over. Alton crawls out of the car and into the grass by the roadside. Wherever he touches, the grass dies. He tells them they're being followed and says that Sarah and Lucas should take the car to a hotel. Alton and Roy will go on foot through the woods and meet them later. Roy carries Alton into the forest, where they eventually find a small cave with water nearby. Alton lies down, and Roy suggests they wait there until daylight passes. Alton says he's ready to be out in the sun now. Meanwhile, Paul sits in his office studying the church's sermons. He plots the coordinates mentioned in them on a map and compares them with places linked to Alton's past incidents. Eventually, Paul figures out where Alton is heading and alerts the rest of the team. Doak and Levi arrive at Eldon's house after tracing the van's registration back to him. They question Eldon and manage to get some information out of him about Alton's movements. As morning arrives, Roy and Alton walk into an open field and watch the sun rise. At first, the sunlight hurts Alton, and he cries out as his eyes flash. Then his entire body fills with light, and a small, glowing dome forms around them. Later, Alton reunites with Sarah and Lucas in a hotel room they prepared. Alton explains that he and Roy saw another world layered on top of their own. It's filled with people like him, and he believes that's where he belongs. Alton now looks healthy again and can make his hands and arms glow on command. They pack up and prepare to leave the hotel. As Lucas steps outside, shots are fired. Doak and Levi restrain Lucas and Roy and force their way inside, where they grab Sarah and kidnap Alton. Sarah manages to free herself and runs outside to release Lucas and Roy. They rush to their car, planning to chase after the truck carrying Alton. Once on the highway, they run into a massive traffic jam. Roy drives onto the shoulder to get around the cars, but is stopped by military personnel and told to get back in line. While waiting, they spot helicopters overhead and see the abandoned truck Doak and Levi were driving. Roy realizes this means the government now has Alton. Alton is taken to a white observation room and seated alone in a chair. On the other side of the glass, Paul and several FBI agents watch him through a live video feed. They try to question Alton, but he refuses to speak to anyone except Paul, and only in private. Once everyone leaves, Alton pauses the video feed, unlocks the door, and lets Paul into the room. Alton tells Paul that he belongs in another world and needs Paul's help to get there. His eyes begin to glow as he focuses on Paul. At the same time, Roy, Lucas, and Sarah stand helplessly in a parking lot when all the payphones suddenly start ringing. Roy answers one and hears Paul on the line. Paul introduces himself, explains that he has Alton, and says he wants to return him. He gives Roy a set of coordinates to meet at, then destroys the phone. Nearby, Alton casually unlocks and starts a car. They meet Paul in the woods, where he returns Alton safely. Paul asks if he can come with them, but they say no. To avoid trouble, Paul handcuffs himself using Lucas's cuffs. Under an overpass, Sarah and Alton put on bulletproof vests. They get back in the car and head toward their final destination, knowing there will be military roadblocks along the way. As they approach one, Roy tells Sarah and Alton to duck down. Roy drives through the road spikes and past the soldiers. The airbags deploy, but they keep going. A short distance later, they stop. Sarah and Alton get out and run into the woods while Roy and Lucas drive off, drawing the military vehicles after them. In a clearing, Alton stands still as his eyes begin to glow. The ground shakes, and a massive dome forms around the area. Inside it, huge, futuristic buildings appear. Beams of light move through the forest and turn into people from Alton's world. They walk toward him, and Alton smiles. The car Roy and Lucas are driving finally breaks down and crashes, flipping upside down. Soldiers arrive and arrest them. Alton says goodbye to Sarah and disappears with the others from his world. Later, agents question Lucas about Sarah and Alton's location, but he says he doesn't know anything. When they get frustrated, they bring in Paul, and the two pretend they've never met. Roy is eventually imprisoned, hooked up to wires. As he looks out over the prison yard, his eyes begin to glow.